Welcome to Faithfully Growing Together in This Growth Moment, a podcast to help us all learn, grow, and transition together. I'm your host, Tim Fortescue, a life coach, coming alongside people of faith as we all manage transitions together. Today I want to talk to you about order, disorder, and reorder in regards to our faith. If you've ever struggled with your faith or wonder if you even believe anymore, you might find this episode helpful. Before we jump into this week's episode, how are you doing? How have you been growing this week? What are your wins? What do you have to share about? It's been a win for me to welcome summer. My kids finished school this week, and finishing a year of distance and hybrid learning has been a win for our whole family. And it's something to celebrate, and it's good for me to take a minute to pause and be grateful for these things and to celebrate these accomplishments. What about you? What are your struggles? And how have you grown and how you interact with them this week? What are you grateful for? How are you growing? If you'd like to send me an email and let me know how you're growing and what you're grateful for and maybe your wins and shares, you can find my email in the show notes. Well, let's talk about today's content. My faith journey has had its ups and downs, and maybe that's true for you too. Growing up in the South, I was told not to question God and my faith. However, as an adult, having the freedom to ask questions has been good. As a result, instead of going down the quote-unquote slippery slope that others feared, my faith has been strengthened and has grown. For me, as a Christian in my 40s, Jesus represents the mature image of God, even more so now than in my 20s. But that doesn't mean that I always have to be right and that others have to be wrong. The freedom to question and not to be so black and white in my thinking has strengthened my faith and has made it as strong as it's probably ever been. And maybe you're struggling in your faith and wondering what you even believe anymore. Well, I want you to know you're not alone, and I hope that what I share today is encouraging and helpful. There are many models of human and spiritual development. We could describe 3 stages as simple consciousness, complex consciousness, both fight and flight, and non-dual consciousness, the unitive way, or the third way. Richard Rohr, who has been influential in my faith journey, calls these development stages order, disorder, and reorder. So let's look at number 1, order. We begin with almost entirely tribal thinking, mirroring the individual journey, which starts with an egocentric need for order and self. Only gradually do we move toward inclusive love. In the second stage, disorder. We slowly recognize the invitation to a face-to-face love affair through the biblical dialogue of election, failure, sin, and grace, which matures the soul. This is where we need wisdom teachers to guide us through our disorder. And then finally, number 3, reorder. Among a symbolic few, there's a breakthrough to unitive consciousness. For example, figures like Abraham and Sarah, Moses, David, the psalmists, many of the prophets, Job, Mary Magdalene, Jesus, and Paul in Christian tradition. This is also what some call enlightenment or salvation in other traditions. Rohr states that conservatives normally get trapped in the first stage. Progressives are trapped in the second stage, and only a minority of either group seem to get to the third. The last stage is considered dangerous to people in the first stage and rather unknown and invisible to people in the second stage. If you are not trained in a trust of both love and mystery, and also some ability to hold anxiety and paradox, all of which allow the divine entry into the soul, you will not proceed very far on the spiritual journey. In fact, you'll often run back to stage 1 when the going gets rough in stage 2. The great weakness of much Western spirituality is that there is little understanding of the necessity of darkness and not knowing, which is the transformative alchemy of faith. This is what keeps so much religion in stage 1. Thus, the biblical tradition, and Jesus in particular, praises faith even more often than love. Why? Because faith is that patience with mystery that allows you to negotiate the stages of life and move toward non-egocentric love. As both John of the Cross and Gerald May point out in their own descriptions of the dark night of the soul, God teaches the soul most profoundly through darkness, and not just light. We only need enough light to be able to trust the darkness. Trials and darkness teach us how to trust in a very practical way that a good God is guiding us. I don't need to be perfectly certain before I take the next step. Now I can trust that even my mistakes will be used in my favor, if I allow them to be. This is a wonderful way to grow in human love too, by the way. Darkness, mistakes, and trials are the supreme teachers. Success really teaches you nothing. It just feels good. Love is the source and goal. Faith is the slow process of getting there, and hope is the willingness to move forward without resolution and closure. And these are indeed the three things that last, as 1 Corinthians 13 says. People who have these gifts, faith, hope, and love, are indestructible. Maybe it'd be good for you to take some time to think through these 3 stages of order, disorder, and reorder in regards to faith. I know for me, as black and white as my thinking was early on in my faith journey, that order really was necessary to set up a framework so that I could have disorder and deconstruct, and now have reorder or reconstruction into such a life-giving faith and freedom that I have today. So I'd encourage you to take some time and think through that in regards to your faith if you think it'd be helpful. And I hope that you found this content helpful. If you did, please rate the podcast with a 5-star review. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, I'll put a link to my Facebook group in the show notes. Additionally, if you'd like to talk more about your faith and faith journey, or maybe a transition that you're going through, I invite you to book a free consultation at www.faithfullygrowing.com. But thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to what lies ahead as we all continue to faithfully grow.